Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping into Blazor. It's a framework from Microsoft that's taking a serious shot at solving one of the oldest headaches in web development, that great divide between what happens on a server and what happens in your browser. So let's get into it. All right, so to really get why Blazor is such a big deal, you got to understand the problem it's built to fix. For ages, web development has basically been split right down the middle into two totally different camps. So, on one hand, you've got the front end. This is everything that happens right there in your web browser. It's the land of JavaScript, the stuff you actually see and click on. Then, on the other side, you've got the back end. This is the powerhouse, running on a server somewhere using languages like C#, Java, or Python to do all the heavy lifting. You know, the real business logic and data management. And here's the kicker. These two worlds have to be in constant communication, usually through these complicated things called APIs. And trust me, getting them to talk nicely can be a real pain. And because of this split, developers basically have to be fluent in two completely different languages, two different ecosystems. It slows everything down, it opens the door for bugs, it's just complicated. So you have to ask, right? What if we could just tear down that wall? What if you could build the entire app, front end and back end, with just one single language? And that's the big idea behind Blazor. This is Microsoft's answer to that age-old problem. They're trying to let you use C# and the whole .NET ecosystem for everything, from the deep server-side logic all the way to the pixels in the browser. So what is Blazor, really? Well, at its heart, it's a framework for building your user interface, the front-end part. But you get to do it with C#, not JavaScript. And that is a huge deal. It means if you're a C# developer, you can now build a full modern web app from top to bottom without having to switch languages or, completely switch your brain into JavaScript mode. Okay, I know what you're thinking. That sounds impossible, right? Kind of like magic. I mean, for as long as I can remember, the rule has been simple. Browsers only speak HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's it. So how in the world are we running C# in there? The secret sauce here is a pretty amazing technology called WebAssembly, or WASM for short. Think of it like a universal translator for your browser. It lets you take code written in heavy-duty languages like C# or C++ and compile it into a special format that browsers can understand and run. And get this, it runs at almost the same speed as code running directly on your computer. Plus, it all happens in the same secure, lockdown environment that JavaScript lives in. Okay, so we know how it's possible. But one of the coolest things about Blazor is its flexibility. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. It gives you a choice about where your C# code actually runs. These are called render modes. The two main ways to do it are Blazor Server and Blazor Client. With Blazor Server, all your code is actually running on the server. The browser's kind of like a dumb terminal, and all the UI updates are zapped back and forth over a live connection. This makes the initial page load super quick. Then there's Blazor Client. Here, your entire app and even a mini .NET runtime gets downloaded and runs right inside the browser using that WebAssembly magic we just talked about. This is awesome because it means your app can work even if you're offline. The only trade-off is that the first load can be a little slower. So that's a classic trade-off, isn't it? Do you want a fast start or do you want it to work offline? It feels like you have to pick one. But what if I told you that you could have your cake and eat it too? And that's where this really clever feature called Auto Render Mode comes into play. It's pretty ingenious, actually. It starts out using Blazor Server, so the user gets the page almost instantly. But then, in the background, while they're clicking around, it's quietly downloading the WebAssembly client version. As soon as that's ready, it just seamlessly switches over. No interruption, you get the fast load and the powerful client-side experience. The best of both worlds, for real. Okay, so that's the how and the where. Now let's talk about the what. How do you actually build something with Blazor? Well, turns out no matter which render mode you're using, the foundation is always the same. The answer is components. In Blazor, absolutely everything is a component. So what's a component? It's just a chunk of your user interface that's totally self-contained. It has its own visual layout, its own C# logic, all bundled together. The Lego brick analogy is perfect here. You build a specific brick, say a search bar or a product card, and once you've built it, you can just snap it into place anywhere you need it, over and over again. So you've got all these Lego bricks, but how do they connect? Well, if a big component, the parent, needs to give some information to a smaller one, the child, it passes data down using something called a parameter. Now, what if the child needs to tell the parent something happened, like, hey, someone just clicked me? It sends a message up using a custom event. And if you need them to be constantly in sync, there's something called a custom bind, which is basically a two-way street for data to flow back and forth automatically.
All right, we've gone through the nuts and bolts, but let's zoom out for a second. Why should you care? What's the real payoff for building apps this way? Really, it boils down to one huge concept: the unified stack. You get to write your entire app in C#. You get to tap into that enormous, powerful .NET library that's been around for decades. Think about it. You can write your data validation rules once and use that exact same code on both the server and in the browser. That means less code to write, fewer bugs, and for any team that's already in the .NET world, it means you can build things way, way faster. And this really makes you wonder about the future, doesn't it? As things like Blazor and WebAssembly get even better, is that old, hard line between front-end and back-end development just fading away? Are we heading towards a world where using a single language for everything isn't the exception but the rule? It's a pretty exciting thought. Thanks for joining this explainer.